Hey everyone, looking for the best GPU to crush 1080p gaming in 2024? 1080p remains the most popular resolution for gaming. This is especially true for competitive gaming, where a higher refresh rate is more appealing than the resolution. I've done the research and picked out the top 3 graphics cards that'll boost your gaming experience. Trust me, you won't want to miss any of my 3 choices, so stay tuned. And if you find this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. All the GPUs mentioned and their prices are listed in the description. Let's dive in. Number 3. ASRock Intel Arc A750 Challenger D 8GB OC. Coming third on our list of the best graphics cards for 1080p gaming is the ASRock Intel Arc 750 Challenger D 8GB OC. Arc A750 is the lower tier of the Arc 7 lineup, with the Intel Arc A770 topping their list at a higher price point. The Arc series is the first iteration of the commercial Intel graphics cards, and they're quite promising to say the least. To start off, the card is of a typical size you'd expect from a budget to mid-range GPU, with 271mm in length and 132mm wide. It uses the Generation 12.7 architecture, codenamed Alchemist, with a base clock of 2200 MHz that's been boosted by 7% due to the factory-applied overclock. The L2 cache stands at 16 MB, with 448 tensor cores present. With that said, how do all these specs weigh in performance? At 1080p resolution, this card can compare to the performance of much more expensive cards like the RX 7600 XT and even the RTX 4060 in certain games. This is especially impressive considering the card sits in the roundabouts of $200, while the other cards easily go for $300 plus. As for its direct competitors, the RX 6600 XT and even the RX 7600, the Arc A750 can outperform them by 1 to 5% in different games. All of this thanks to continuous driver updates from Intel, which increase the performance of the cards in various games by large margins. However, since these cards are relatively new, I would recommend regularly checking for driver updates if you end up buying one. Unlike AMD and Nvidia, Intel drivers are not quite mature yet, which leaves a lot of room for precious performance gains and stability as they work on improving DirectX support across their cards. All of this performance is backed by the dual-fan cooling system design of the card. The heatsink includes multiple tightly fit copper heat pipes that maximize contact with the PCB, along with a nanothermal paste and premium thermal pads throughout the PCB for improved heat dissipation. This keeps the temperatures at an average of 63 degrees Celsius when playing games at high settings, albeit the power draw remains the highest in comparison with its competitors at around 212 watts. As such, the minimum recommended power supply officially is 550 watts. Fortunately, the acoustics remain at a fairly decent level, though the fans are likely to get loud if you push the limits by applying further overclocks. Other than gaming, I also think this card can be a solid choice for streaming, with the presence of the AV1 encoder, which minimizes the hit on performance. Speaking of streaming, the card is capable of streaming video to 4K and even 8K displays, an impressive feature for a budget GPU. As for connectivity, you get a single HDMI 2.1 port along with 3 2.0 display ports. In terms of looks, I do prefer the stock edition of the Intel Arc A750 for a more premium look. The ASRock Arc A750 Challenger D provides a more traditional look with dual axial fans and stripes on the front panel. At such a tight budget, you're not investing in aesthetics, but the overall performance. In short, the card gives a tough time to even higher-end cards while outperforming its direct competitors in most of the games. Plus, considering further optimization of the graphics drivers from Intel, the card is only going to get better. Number 2. Gigabyte GeForce RTX 4060 Gaming OC. The RTX 4060 is Nvidia's attempt at competing at a more budget level than their higher-end cards that come with a premium price point. Based on the Ada Lovelace architecture, the Gigabyte RTX 4060 Gaming OC is a solid contender, backed up by the tried-and-tested Windforce cooler with the performance of the RTX 4060. Looking at the card, you're going to find a triple fan setup rather than the typical dual fan design, giving the card a more powerful look at the very least. Gigabyte is using the same Windforce design they've been using for a few years now, and there's certainly no indication of any future changes either. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. On the backplate, you'll find a stripe design with Gigabyte branding, along with a see-through hull that provides a look into the heatsink. The card is 2 slots wide, but it is quite long, measuring 281mm in length. While this shouldn't be an issue in most cases, if you're going for a compact build, it's certainly a factor to keep in mind. Coming to performance, I've started to like the OC series from Gigabyte as it provides more value for money with a decent increase in performance from the stock version. There's an almost 4% increase in the boost clock, carrying it to 2550 MHz from the stock variant at 2460 MHz. In terms of gaming performance, you can easily throw the latest gen AAA games at the card and achieve 60 plus frames at 1080p. Not to mention, the card outperforms rivals like the 7600 OC variants in most of the games by 1 to 2%. The performance from the stock variant is not that better in any stretch, but that's obvious these days, and it all boils down to the cooler. Speaking of the cooler, Gigabyte continues to use its Windforce cooler, which keeps the thermals quite low. Under heavy workloads for longer intervals, the hotspot reaches a maximum of 73 degrees Celsius, while the temperatures remain at a fairly cool range of 60 degrees Celsius. All of this is thanks to the triple fans, the outer fans of which rotate clockwise and the middle fan rotates counterclockwise, resulting in a vortex-like airflow that dissipates more heat from the heatsink. Gigabyte also uses copper heat pipes in direct contact with the GPU to facilitate heat transfer to the heatsink. On top of a triple fan design, the marketed TDP value of the card remains low at 115 watts, while the official PSU recommendation is 300 watts. You'll need a single 8-pin power connector to power up the card, increasing support for older power supplies. In addition, the card also features dual BIOS, which can be helpful when performing any overclocks, thanks to the efficient cooling system in place. In terms of connectivity, you're looking at 2 HDMI 2.1 ports and 2 DisplayPort 1.4a ports. Some 4060s in the market feature a single HDMI 2.1 port and 3 display ports, so connectivity is something to keep in mind when you're buying a card. Nonetheless, it's not lacking any really important options here, and you should be just fine. Finally, the Gigabyte RTX 4060 Gaming OC turns out to be an excellent choice, especially for 1080p gaming, with its solid cooling system and lots of overclocking overhead, while providing an incredible performance in its stock version. Plus, the professional and minimal aesthetic gives it a premium feel as the cherry on top. Number 1. ASRock AMD Radeon RX 7600 Challenger 8GB. The ASRock AMD Radeon RX 7600 Challenger OC is based on the newest RDNA 3 architecture from AMD, belonging to the Navi 3 generation. This card offers solid value and great performance for 1080p gaming, with significant gains over the previous generation, along with support for AV1 encoding. Starting off with the design of the card, it is typically sized for a card aimed at 1080p, with its 269mm width and 132mm length. This is covered by a dual fan design on the front, with a solid metal backplate with the usual ASRock Challenger stripes and branding. What's not usual, though, is the performance of the card. To start from scratch, the boost clock has been upped by around 2% from the stock version, stretching it to 2693 MHz, along with a higher number of TMUs from the previous generation. In addition, the number of cores has also been increased by 12.5%, totaling 2048 cores. This and the new architecture lead to a staggering 20% performance gain from the previous generation RX 6600 and even outclasses the 8GB variant of the RX 6600 XT. Comparing it to Nvidia, the card gives a tough time to the more expensive RTX 4060 and even beats it in some titles. With such a performance, the card is sure to produce some definitive heat. All of this heat is cooled off by the two striped axial fans by enhancing the overall airflow, not only through its striped design, but also the polished surfacing on the bottom. While the thermals are kept in control, the fan noise levels stay at a minimum due to the silent cooling technology. However, under high workloads for longer intervals, it can become audible. Furthermore, the card also utilizes DR-MOS regulators to not only improve the thermals, but also maintain consistent performance with the help of stable power delivery. This provides an overhead for potential overclocking, allowing you to push the card even further. The TDP value is marketed at around 165 watts, which is on the lower side of the spectrum for such a card, and you'd need a single 8-pin power connector to power this, making it more accessible than the newer 12-volt high-power connector requirement of some cards. Another great addition compared to its predecessor is the support for AV1 encoding. This makes it a perfect choice for a dedicated streaming GPU at a low price point, and you can even simultaneously stream your gameplay without degrading the overall performance of the card. For connectivity, the card supports all of the latest output tech you would need, providing 3 DisplayPort 2.1 slots, along with a single HDMI 2.1a slot. This means it can not only support 4K resolutions, but you can also connect it to an 8K display without any trouble. All in all, the ASRock AMD Radeon RX 7600 Challenger OC offers all of the important features that you would want from a modern 1080p card at a low price, while also not compromising on the performance in AAA titles whatsoever. Thanks for watching! If you're passionate about PC building and elevating your gaming experience, you won't want to miss our other videos. They're packed with valuable suggestions and reviews that could give you the competitive edge you've been searching for. Don't get left behind while others level up their game.